Well, good morning, everyone. It's good to, I was going to say it's good to see you, but you know what I mean. I just wanted to send around another one of these videos. Um, I often feel when I start one of these videos, I get a shock when I look at my own face. I look kind of, sometimes you think, oh, look a bit pale there, and realise how unshaven I can be at times as well. But that's by the by. I wanted to share something with you this morning. Just another thing that's come up in devotions and so on, and just something that I think is probably kind of applicable to our situation at the moment, or maybe just worth bearing in mind, given how things are for us as a church at the moment. I was actually reading. I quite often try and I want to say freshen up my Bible reading routines, because I think sometimes it can get a little. It's not there's anything wrong with the Bible or the method or anything, but I can get a little bit stale sometimes, as in I can get stale, and so trying to change it up a bit is good. And I've been using a few things over the past couple of weeks, and one of these things I've started over the past few days is a book that I realized I had tucked away up behind me there, or over nope other hand over there, yep, somewhere in the there we go, in the bookcases over there, and a book on Acts, just a kind of more devotional study of Acts, called Discover Acts by Stephen. Look at that name there. Oh, I can never figure out which way I'm supposed to be doing things. Stephen, I think his name is Gauk Roger, but anyway, I've never heard that name before. But they're just short little devotions. I think it's like 50 devotion through Acts or whatever. So, and I do love the Book of Acts, but I'm reading some other stuff. But I just came across this morning when he's talking just after Jesus has ascended. So Jesus has given them his mission. He's ascended, and um, chapter 3 of his book, not chapter 3 of Acts, he calls waiting for God to act, and it covers chapter 1, verses 12 to 26. And this is the part where Jesus has given them his commission. He has ascended, and they've watched him go, and those angels come and say, why are you hanging about? Like, there's work to be done, sort of thing. He's going to return in the same way that you've seen him go. And then in verses 12 to 26, what happens is the people who saw Jesus and are his followers, I think there's about 120 of them at this point, they basically go and they pray. They go and pray together. In fact, it will probably just be worth me actually just reading it. But they go, we're told in chapter 1, verse 12, then they return to Jerusalem from the mount called Olivet, which is near Jerusalem, a Sabbath day's journey away. And when they had entered, they went up to the upper room where they were staying. Peter, John, James, Andrew, Philip and Thomas, Bartholomew and Matthew, James the son of Alphaeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas the son of James. Verse 14, all these with one accord were devoting themselves to prayer, together with the women and Mary the mother of Jesus and his brothers. And so these people, they've been told to wait. They've been told to wait for the Spirit, and so they are waiting, and they're going to now. They're now. What do we do in the meantime while we wait? We pray. That's the response, prayer. So the little subheading in his book, you got waiting for God to act. The subheading is called obedience to God. It says, obedience to God often involves waiting, and waiting involves prayer. And a particular paragraph that struck me as he was talking about this need for prayer and for waiting, and that's what they were doing. That's them obeying Jesus. And now that I've gone and said this, I've probably gone and lost where I'm meant to be. Very good, very good. But anyway, maybe I saw this in another thing. Nope, don't think I did. It must be in here. It's in here somewhere. Anyway, the point that he makes, or basically the phrase that he says, which for the life of me, for some reason, I can't see right now, but it was so good I just remembered it. But basically what he said was, often the church replaces prayer with activity. We replace prayer with activity. And so I think that's a really helpful reminder, because often I think we do that. We measure our spirituality, or we measure our maturity or depth or growth or something by the amount of activity we have, maybe the number of programs we're doing, maybe the number of evenings out we spend as a church. I don't necessarily mean us as a congregation, because I know we don't have all that much going on at the moment, and it's part of my point. But is that so often we can measure it by how much we are doing, and prayer becomes this thing that we say is important, but how much importance do we really place on it? And do we really believe that it makes a difference? Do we really believe? I find the quote. Do we really believe that it's that powerful and actually makes a difference? So here we are. Let me just get this. Luke. This is the quote now that I, for some reason, couldn't see, even though it's a really short chapter. This is the paragraph. Luke closes this section with a reference to two key principles of success for the first Christians. They were together and in prayer. Together and in prayer. United prayer remains an incredibly potent force in any church. Many Christians and their churches often substitute activity for prayer. When God wants activity as a result of prayer and empowered by when God wants activity as a result of prayer and empowered by prayer. Prayer is the work of the church. It should never be an excuse for idleness or avoiding costly action, but it must precede, accompany, and follow all our activity as the people of God. I think that is a fantastic statement. It should never be an excuse for idleness or avoiding costly action, but it must precede, accompany, and follow all our activity as the people of God. I think that's tremendous. I think that's so true, and I think it's so important to be reminded of it, because I think generally churches and as Christians there are those of us who are prayer warriors and love to pray. I think I have a gift for it. I think there are those who have a gift for it. I don't. I think there are those that do. And I think it's so massively important that it's not just something that we do occasionally, but it precedes, accompanies, and follows all our activity as the people of God. And he actually makes the statement, prayer is the work of the church, which is a big thing to say, but I understand what he's saying. And I think even as a pastor, and I know other pastors will talk about this, we forget that part of our work is prayer. And if we don't, often we act the same way. We think in worldly terms of productivity. We think we need to be productive. That means doing something. So that can mean preparing a sermon, that can mean visiting someone or meeting up with someone, or listening to something or reading something, a very kind of doing thing. But we don't see prayer as being so essential. But yet you see with the apostles, when there was a problem of certain groups of people not being fed, the widows there in Acts 6, they delegate that responsibility to someone else, and the phrase they use is, it would not be right for us to give up the preaching of the word and prayer in order to serve tables, or something to that effect. It's not that they're denying the importance of serving tables, hugely important, but they recognise that their role and their job is preaching and prayer, teaching the word, praying. And I find that challenging as a pastor, because it's very easy for me to move on to do something else. Sometimes I can think, actually, when I should linger a bit more and pray, I start thinking about, I wonder if I've got any emails, or I wonder if, there is that thing I need to get on with, and somehow I think that is more pressing than just being with God in prayer and taking all those things to Him in prayer. And I think it's important for us, and as we're going through Luke, actually, it's already we're just sort of beginning to wrap up chapter 5 of Luke's Gospel, 5 of 24 chapters, so we could be here a while. But in chapter 5, even already, you begin to see the pattern of Jesus' life and ministry, where he focuses on teaching, and obviously he heals and casts out demons as well, but a large focus on teaching, but also on prayer, personal prayer. He goes to desolate places, quiet places. He gets away to be alone with the Lord, and is devoted to prayer. And so I'm just finding that very challenging. I was just thinking, in terms of our time, this weird, strange time we find ourselves, where we can't meet physically, where we had plans. We had plans before all this happened. Work in schools, dropping in the building, our Easter week, and we just got going with the men's group, and one or two other things possibly in the back burner. And you just sort of realise that all that has been stopped because of this our current situation, which is not a surprise to God. It's in God's providence, and at home more often, not able to meet up with one another as much. Um, Maybe this is an opportunity for us to be praying, and obviously the togetherness aspect we're missing, but we still do that over Zoom calls and so on. Can do that over Zoom calls and so on. But we're in the house, we're in the upper room, we're waiting. We're not waiting for what they were waiting for. We're waiting for this to lift. So maybe in the meantime, it's an opportunity for us to be devoted to prayer. And even as I say that now, I feel so challenged by that myself. But let's make that a priority, shall we? To be devoted to prayer as a church, and who knows what God might bring from that. And as we wait, we should pray and not stop once everything goes back to some sort of relative normality, but continue to pray. Let everything be preceded by prayer. Was he says, accompanied and follow up with prayer also. Just be living that life of prayer, praying without ceasing. And maybe this is an opportunity for us to really wait on God and to spend more time in prayer. For those of us who do have more time, and I'm aware that not everyone does, for those that do, or that evening that we might have been out doing something, maybe spend a bit more time in prayer during that evening. So anyway, that was just something I wanted to share. I was convicted and challenged by myself and really encouraged by it at the same time. And I hope it's something that you find the same, both an encouragement but also a challenge for us all as a church. So hope everyone has a good day. It's a beautiful day out there. I know not everyone can get out for their exercise or whatever. Some of you, I was out for a wee jog this morning, first one since I had a cough. Some of you are able to get out for a walk. Some of you can walk around your gardens. That's as much as you can do. If there's a day to do that, today is probably the day. It's looking very nice out there just now. But whatever you do, I hope you are okay and are doing all right and encouraged, and are able to get some time with God as well. Okay, we'll speak to you again soon.